Hello and welcome back. Today we're digging into an analysis of Candace Owens' response to being called a cult leader, specifically looking at her rhetoric, things like forced teaming, her use of certain kinds of knowledge claims.
Yeah, the goal is really to make this analysis as strong and, frankly, undeniable as possible.
Exactly. The evidence gathered is compelling, really hard to ignore already, but we see a few ways to maybe make the argument truly bulletproof. So let's just dive right in.
Sounds good. I agree. The creator's done a ton of work documenting the specific tactics. The observation is meticulous. That's the real strength here.
It is. It's a really solid foundation.
But we need to make sure the framing, how it's presented, supports that evidence, doesn't accidentally weaken it.
Okay, so that brings us to the first point. A key theme seems to be the heavy use of pretty strong psychological terms.
Right.
And that leads to our first critique. The persistent use of strong psychological labeling risks undermining the robust behavioral evidence presented.
Yeah, that's definitely something that stood out. I mean, I worry a bit about relying so much on these definitive diagnoses.
Especially when, as the creator rightly points out, they're not a psychologist.
Exactly. The piece quite frequently labels Owens a psychopath, or maybe a narcissist, and sometimes it even brings in Jordan Peterson's supposed diagnoses to back that up.
And the weakness there is just, it's inherent in doing that, right? When you slap on those clinical labels, you kind of give her or her defenders a really easy out.
Too easy.
It becomes dismissible. That's just subjective name-calling or, amateur diagnosis.
Yep, and it lets them completely sidestep the actual documented stuff, the communication tactics that are the core of the analysis.
It shifts the whole argument away from a strategic critique, which is strong, to a personal diagnosis, which is, well, easier to attack.
Precisely. So the suggestion for improvement here is really about strengthening the impact by shifting the focus. Move it away from diagnosing the person.
Like, she is a narcissist.
Right. Away from that and entirely onto analyzing the observed patterns. What are the communication patterns? What are the behaviors? Especially in the context of how cult dynamics are known to work.
So let the descriptions, the meticulous descriptions of her actions, imply the traits, maybe, without needing that formal clinical judgment.
Exactly. Let the evidence speak for itself.
I wonder, though, just playing devil's advocate for a sec, if removing all psychological language might, diminish the urgency? Is there a way to kind of reference that field without giving a diagnosis you can't professionally back up?
Well, I think the strategy we're suggesting does that. It balances it by focusing on the mechanism of the behavior.
Okay.
So by concentrating on what she does and the effect it has on her audience, rather than trying to label who she fundamentally is, the critique just becomes much harder to argue against,
Yeah, the evidence has to stand on its own. That's a great distinction. Okay, so what would that look like? Can we give some concrete examples of how that shift might play out in the writing?
Sure. So instead of flat out declaring her a narcissist, you could detail the behavior that points to that trait.
Okay.
Like, the creator notes how Owens attacks critic Carrie Smith's set design.
Right, instead of the substance of the video.
Yeah. So the material could rephrase that to emphasize the strategy. Something like her decision to attack critic Carrie Smith's personal set design, rather than engaging with the substance of the video, demonstrates a calculated tactic, a tactic of character flexion, often used to avoid factual debate and preserve the leader's sort of illusion of infallibility. See? It's about the tactic.
Right. Or, okay, when discussing her pride, that refusal to question herself, you'd eliminate the label there too?
Yep, and focus on the rigidity of the system she creates.
How it functions.
Exactly. You could rephrase that point to focus on the, let's say, the demonstrated inability to accept even verifiable errors. Like her commitment to an asserted truth. Even when proven wrong on minor claims like those details about the CNN interview, it exemplifies the rigid defensiveness.
Okay.
That's characteristic of high-control systems that need to maintain absolute authority.
So it's always about the documented, observable behavior and its function within that structure, not the underlying clinical label.
That's it. It makes the argument feel more sophisticated and, honestly, just harder to dispute.
Okay, yeah. Focusing on mechanism over label, that definitely feels strategically smarter, insulates the critique from those easy attacks.
Right.
So if we nail the credibility by focusing on behavior, the next step is making sure the analysis itself stays, razor sharp, doesn't introduce things that might distract. Which brings us, I think, to structure and focus, especially around integrating religious ideas.
Yeah. I found that transition a bit jarring, actually, because the core analysis of her rhetoric is so well grounded in, modern psychological and sociological observations of cults.
Very solid.
But then it pulls in this very specific religious analogy. So critique 2, integrating a highly specific religious analogy with otherwise secular psychological analysis introduces an interpretive leap that could confuse or deter certain audiences.
Okay, so the analysis does a great job dissecting forced teaming, right? Owens' use of we, us, we know.
Yeah, that part's powerful. Strong sociological observation.
But the weakness, then, is that the critique draws this really sharp, direct parallel between that collective language and the Bible passage, Mark 5.
The Legion passage, yeah. Equating the we are many with essentially demonic possession.
And that's, well, it's a sudden deep dive into theology, isn't it?
It's a huge rhetorical pivot. It moves away from the established framework the piece was using, things like repetition, sarcasm, the whole Charlie Dream thing for authority.
Right.
And then suddenly introduces this massive, and let's be honest, potentially unsubstantiated claim about demonic possession. Even metaphorically, it risks overshadowing the factual analysis of her rhetoric, especially for readers who came for the sociology or psychology.
Okay, so the suggestion here is really about audience alignment, keeping the focus tight.
Mm-hmm.
The creator needs to decide, either fully commit to a multidisciplinary approach and maybe explicitly label sections, psychological analysis, theological rhetorical analysis, something like that.
Or
for maybe broader appeal, just separate the strong psychological evidence from that very specific religious metaphor. It's about managing expectations and the analytical scope, right?
yeah, absolutely. So building on that, what are the concrete ways to do that separation?
Well, if the goal is to keep the focus purely on cult dynamics and rhetoric,
Which seems to be the main thrust.
then the path seems pretty clear. You'd probably remove the Mark 5 Legion comparison entirely.
Okay.
And instead, you double down on the sociological implications of forced teaming, creating that exclusive in-group, setting themselves up as the arbiters of truth against what she calls the Fed narrative.
Focus on the group dynamics.
Exactly. Alternatively, if that religious point feels absolutely essential, if the creator really wants to keep it,
Then maybe frame it differently?
yeah, structure it maybe as a concluding thought, more about the historical resonance of that kind of collective language.
Ah, okay. Like pattern recognition?
Sort of, yeah. Position it as an interesting historical echo, or maybe a footnote on shared human experiences with these kinds of movements. But don't present it as a core factual claim about her spiritual state, or like a main pillar of the analysis.
That way it retains the idea, but without sacrificing the analytical weight of the main argument.
Right, just a small adjustment in framing.
Got it. Okay, so that handles the content structure, the mix of ideas. But I also noticed some moments related more to the overall flow, maybe the tone.
Ah, okay.
There were points where the voice seemed to shift a bit from objective analyst to maybe a frustrated participant.
Right, and that can damage that objective momentum you've worked so hard to build elsewhere.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that brings us nicely to critique 3, structure and flow. The inclusion of personal reactions to minor elements and commentary on audience engagement interrupts the systematic flow of the high-impact critique.
Yeah, the creator does such a powerful job documenting Owens's moves, systematic. But then sprinkled in are these moments of personal frustration.
Like what?
Well, like voicing stress over how Owens's books are organized.
Okay, I remember that.
Or noting with pretty clear annoyance that Owens attacked that smaller creator, the one with only 1,100 views, while ignoring the submitter's own, presumably larger channel.
Right, and the weakness there is, it's relatable, sure, on a human level. We all get frustrated.
Of course.
But it shifts the focus, doesn't it? It goes from analyzing cult tactics to the creator's emotional state or their platform visibility.
And that dilutes the perceived objectivity, that momentum. It starts to feel a bit less like a formal dismantling and maybe a bit more like a personal grievance in those specific moments.
So, the suggestion?
Use every single moment of airtime to analyze Owens's demonstrated behaviors. Those peripheral critiques, the personal frustrations, they probably need to be excised, cut out to create a relentlessly focused argument.
And if you do comment on something like Owens attacking a small creator,
that observation has to immediately pivot, turn it into a strategic analysis of why leaders like her might do that. What function does it serve?
Ah, okay. So channeling that emotion or observation into analytical strength.
Exactly.
Can you give a specific example? How would you execute that pivot?
Absolutely. First, the bit about the stress from the book organization, just cut it. It's not relevant to the core argument about tactics.
Okay, straightforward.
Then, when discussing her choice to go after that 1100 view video, don't focus on the why not me aspect. Focus entirely on the strategic reason why she attacked the small one.
Right.
Follow that observation immediately with a sharp analysis. Something like, this fixation on a minor critic serves as a calculated performance of vigilance.
Okay, yeah. That completely reframes what could sound like personal annoyance into an objective observation about group manipulation, about reinforcing follower behavior.
Precisely. And look, the core of this material is already incredibly strong. It really is, because of that meticulous observation of behavior you mentioned, the forced teaming, the repetition, relying on authority, that self-certain.
It's all there.
It's all there. The material is fundamentally sound in its observation. These three areas we've discussed, they just represent the biggest opportunities, I think, to maximize its sort of scholarly tone and its universal impact. So, by addressing them, the creator moves the analysis from something that just feels right intuitively
Yeah.
to an argument that's logically just unimpeachable, resilient against counterattack.
That's the goal.
Okay, great. So just to recap the three main areas for development. First, moving entirely away from clinical labeling, shifting towards observable behavioral analysis to really shore up that credibility.
Yep, behavior over labels.
Second, clarifying the boundary between the psychological observation and that specific theological speculation, just to maintain a unified focus and avoid confusing the audience.
Manage the frameworks.
And third, boosting that focus dramatically by removing the personal frustrations, the meta-commentary about viewer reach or platform stuff. Keep it laser-focused on Owens's tact.
Trim the peripheral elements.
Yeah, these are all really actionable steps, I think, designed to make the critique feel less like a reaction and more like a definitive, systematic dismantling of rhetorical tactics.
Absolutely. And honestly, we're really excited to see the next version of this analysis. It's got such strong bones. Keep that focus. Make those adjustments.
Yeah.
Please, send it back our way when you're ready.
We definitely can't wait to read it. All right, I think that's all the time we have for this critique. Thanks for listening.